Our last presentation today is our Executive Director of UN Women. She was introduced yesterday, so I don't think I need to repeat all the wonderful words that was said. So could I just, on a perhaps personal note, say that you're an inspiration and a role model for so many of us. Thank you very much for this. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kira, for that kind introduction. Minister, wonderful to see you again. And thank you so much to my fellow panelists for thought-provoking presentations. I think we are going to make sure that as we leave here, we actually are going to remember the issues that you have raised. We are going down memory lane, 100 years, and going forward 100 years again. Please close your eyes. Think back 100 years. Think of those founding mothers and fathers. What did they expect today to look like? If you just close your eyes for a moment, imagine them walking in, deciding that women would be able to vote. Did they expect that we would have had a woman as a president here? Did they expect that we would be sitting here having achieved what you have achieved in this country and in this part of the world? I don't know. Maybe they just want it just a little bit. But that's where we are today. Okay, open your eyes. 100 years later, what do we have? Change is now irreversible. What we have achieved is irreversible. We can never again have a situation where we accept democracy that is defined by a group of men making decisions for us. Even if it still continues to happen in many parts of the world, but it is unacceptable. Women are not passive in every part of the world, from the poorest country to the richest country. What do we have 100 years later? For yourself here, especially, change has been substantive, notwithstanding that it is incomplete, but it is substantive. We cannot take that away. Change also has permeated in the sense that we expect change for women not just to be about the numbers, but we need the numbers, but we want it in every aspect and sphere of life, at home, at work, at school, in the church, in public spheres. So we are talking about change that permeates every aspect of life, because discrimination against women happens everywhere. And I think now we've institutionalized that as a value system that defines change that is acceptable to us. Today, also, we have agreed that for change, for gender equality to be truly meaningful, it has to be universal. It shouldn't just work for some women, it should work for all women. And that is why we would like to make sure that the women's struggle is globalized. Because when we talk about underrepresentation of women, that is a universal problem. So we all have to fight it everywhere, because when we win it in one part of the country, we'll galvanize change in another part of the country. We know that the women's struggle has to be universal because unpaid care work and the dominance of women as unpaid caregivers is a problem in every part of the world. When we find ways of reducing in one country, when you here are able to entrench paternity care, this is something that is good for women all over the world, because that is a practice that we can take to every part of the world. Change has to be universal, because the problem of women's body not being seen in some countries, but in many ways, everywhere in the country, if we look at the way the media treats women, as a property of everybody else, not just something that women must have control over. That fight, we all have to fight, because it occurs everywhere. We have to fight together, because violence against women occurs everywhere. It is a universal problem. We should win it everywhere. If there is domestic violence, in conflict, in countries in conflict, in post-conflict, it becomes also part of the public fight. We have to make sure that we win it at home, so that when your envoy goes to represent the interest of your country, to stand and represent the interest of peacekeeping, that person is already feeling strongly about the end of violence against women everywhere. Whether a woman is in a country that is undergoing violence, or whether it is in a country that is post-conflict, because violence is not acceptable anywhere at a domestic level and all other levels. So we are in this thing together. As we win the victories somewhere else, we must know that we have an obligation to fight for other women elsewhere. Because to whom so much is given, so much is also expected. And because we are in a better place to make changes for others. This is what global sisterhood is all about. And this is one of the strengths of the women's movement. We also heard today about the importance, or rather in the last 2 days, the importance of investing in women. The fact that when you invest in women, society gains much more. Investing in women has been proved over and over again that it has a very high rate of return. And not in a commercial sense, but in a rights sense especially. Women also have proven over and over again, it came out in the discussion, that women are actually not victims. Women are solution makers. And our narrative about women should not be talking about women as needing to be done things for. Women are mobilizing men to be partners because women are already doing things for themselves. But because this is not a problem that women are causing, this is a problem of society, everybody has to take responsibility. Women also see the need to ensure that we change also the stereotype about women amongst women. We want to change the stereotypes also amongst men, but we will also make sure that we liberate ourselves to the extent that there may be women who, for instance, in the case of violence against women, may not want to take a stand against a partner because maybe they think that, as sometimes we've heard in court, they do not want to tell on a partner who's violent because they do not want to disturb the peace in the family. Empowering the women not to accept that anyone has a right to violate them is also important. So the mindset that allows women to give themselves the permission to demand the respect that they deserve is important. In the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report last year, it was argued that if we do not do things differently, if we do not take bolder steps in what we are doing, especially in politics and in the economy, it is going to take us 81 years to see parity in the economy. And it is going to take us more than 50 years to see parity in politics. Now, we do not want a child who is born today to be 81 years before they can see parity in economy, or a child who's born today to be 50 years before they can see parity in politics. Because that will mean the next 50 years, half a century, I think those founding mothers will walk back again and say, you people now are really sleeping on the job. If it takes us 81 years to bring about changes in the economy, I think we would have let down many of the women in the last 100 years who have been working very hard. For what faces us in the road ahead, we definitely need to make sure that we shorten the road ahead, but we do not lose on the substance. It therefore becomes important for us to choose the battles that we're going to fight, especially fight those battles that we can fight together across the world, so that when we make change, we make the change for all the women of the world. And I would say violence against women is one of those areas where we need to fight together across the world. I would say issues that have to do with reproductive rights and sexual rights are universal issues where we have to fight together. Unpaid care work and all that goes with that, including redistributing it, remunerating it, is also an area where we need to fight together. And of course, representation of women, which continues to be stubbornly a difficult area for us to defeat decisively, is a critical area where we can actually fight together. And I'm not saying we take away some of the specific issues that may occur in different countries, but it's also important, especially for us at where we stand as UN Women, to make sure that we highlight the things that we can help us to mobilize as many women as possible, because everybody can identify with that. And when we win on those, the other battles that others are fighting, which are unique to their community, would also benefit. And of course, the dismantling of patriarchy is a precondition for success, just as much as the empowerment for women is a precondition for the Sustainable Development Goal and the 2030 agenda to be successful. Making sure that we communicate in such a way that everybody understands that becomes very, very important. There are highlights in history that we have always to remember that define the epoch of the women's struggle. Gaining the vote in every country by women is always an important moment. But there are also interesting moments, like, for instance, for women in China, the untying of the feet was a critical moment where women whose feet were tied couldn't walk around, were constrained enormously. Was an important moment in history, both psychologically, physically, and just the amount of women to move from point A to point B on their own. Very important also, the invention of the birth control pill, giving women the right to decide when they are going to have a child and the intervals of the children without the permission of a government and a man. We need other epoch events in our history now that will just be as big as untying the feet, as voting for the first time, and as having a birth control pill. An earthquake that will tilt the system altogether, because little and incremental steps now will not give us the ultimates that we want. We actually need not incremental change, but bold change, big change. And that is why I will argue we have got to do it together universally. And you will be in the forefront because you have seen so much and achieved so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Phumzile.